All right, research shows that most people are more comfortable discussing sex, race, and mental illness than money. So we're going to talk about money today with Jessica Moorhouse, the best-selling national bestseller of Everything But Money. So Jessica, why do people struggle with money?
Part of the reason I think got into the world of personal finance when I was in my 20s was I was struggling with money. Really, it was more of an income issue, and so I wanted to learn how can I, be more, how can I optimize my income? And then once you kind of figure that out and you figure out how do I invest, how do I, be more efficient with my money, you'd think that all your problems would be solved. But what was interesting is over the past 10 years, not only have I been kind of on my own personal finance journey, but I've been talking to probably at this point thousands of people about their own journeys. And there was definitely a point, especially when I became a financial counselor and was working with people one on one and could really dive into their own issues. They would come to me because they thought they had an issue with money, a financial issue. That was, I'm in debt or I have a cash flow problem. I can't stick to a budget. I don't know how to invest, whatever the case is. And then as we would talk, it became more apparent that their issues, like so many people out there with money, are actually about everything but money. And so that's what inspired the book. I really, especially after, having my own podcast, interviewing hundreds of people over the past 10 years, the information's out there. If you want to learn how to be good with money, it's actually not hard to find the how-tos, the ABCs of money. However, so why are we still every year, so many people are in debt, so many people have, less than $1,000 in the bank account. Why are people still struggling with money? And so I really want to talk about, here are all the reasons why, that despite all of this information being effectively free on the internet, and you can teach yourself whatever you want now. There's kind of no gatekeeping like there was 15, 20 years ago. Why are people still in the same position? Especially young people. There's a big struggles with young people. Why is that? And so I really want to dive into kind of the deeper issues, the internal and some external barriers that are preventing you from getting out of your own way. Why do you still have these self-limiting beliefs, even though you know that they exist, but you can't help it? Why do you repeat certain cycles? Why do you have certain behaviors or value systems that may not actually hold true, or you know that you don't want them and they're not healthy and they're hurting you, but you keep doing them? The answer, why? Instead of just talking about the how, I think we have to talk about the why. And so that's what I wrote about.
How there's a chapter in the book you talk about getting bad money habits sort of inherited from your
hmm
parents. And then and this is interesting because I think this is where I see it a lot. So people either rebel or they mimic. Hopefully I
Yeah.
have your phrasing right, but and talk about that. 'Cause I want to break that
Yeah.
apart. I think a lot of people are affected by this.
Yeah, so I kind of talk about it in the terms of rebelling or repeating. And so often how we, most of us weren't sat down and had a nice long discussion about how to money when we were growing up. We learned about money by observing or by listening to our parents, talk about the family finances when they didn't think we were around, but we could hear everything. And so we picked up all of these things and then we bring them with us in adulthood. And often we feel like with the tools that we have, based off whether we think maybe our parents were doing a good job or not such a good job, or whether we felt good about how they managed their money or not, we either stuck with what we knew. And so we repeated what our parents did because it's comfortable, it's familiar, it's what I know now. Or we would kind of overcorrect because maybe we didn't agree with that, or I never want to be like my parents that were always struggling financially. I will never repeat that. I'm going to overcorrect to go on the other kind of side of things and completely rebel and be the opposite, which again may not necessarily be the right course of action. The ideal is probably somewhere in the middle. Take what works, throw out what doesn't, and create your own rules. And again, most of our parents probably had limited financial, literacy. And so they were doing the best they can with what they had, but there's probably a lot of gaps. And so we are now in this world where we can easily fill those gaps if we are motivated and do that kind of work on ourselves to find out what are those gaps and how can I fill them? And again, what is hurting me? What's helping me? How can I, basically deconstruct my money story, the narrative I've been telling myself up until now about my relationship with money, and rebuild it into one that does properly reflect who I am and who I want to be as an adult.
That's interesting. I remember, like, I'm trying to think of my money story. I'm just gonna have you psychologically dissect me, and I got some
Yeah.
questions about you as well. First, I'll talk a little bit about myself. I remember I always had a really, really hard time spending money. This has been something
Mhm.
I've struggled with my entire life. I come from immigrant parents. It's all about
Mhm.
saving, saving, saving.
Yeah.
And it was always in my brain to this day. I spend a lot of money now because I have kids and I have a wife, so they do the
Yeah.
spending for me. But that's been, and I've talked to people who on the podcast who've had immigrant parents as well, and they've all had the same struggle of like, we just cannot spend money on ourselves.
Yeah.
And money's always got to make money or it's got to have some sort of intrinsic value.
Mhm.
How do you, and that's something I'm working on actively, but I'm
Yeah.
aware of it. And when I became aware of it, I had to sit down quietly in a room and like think to myself, why do I have this problem?
Yeah,
Why
and
don't
that's the
I put
first
the,
step is awareness, because most people, again, we're doing the repeating or rebelling completely unconsciously. We don't know we're doing it. So being aware of it
yeah.
is already a really great first step.
But I became very thinking about my childhood though, because I have brothers and so I repeated my parents' behavior of
Mhm.
saving, 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 famine. I have a middle brother
Mhm.
who I remember when we were kids, he ordered, this sticks in your head. He ordered, ice cream from McDonald's and he put caramel on it. And I said,
Mhm.
well, and I said, we can't afford caramel.
Yeah.
And he's like, why not? Why
Yeah.
not? We should be able to have the best things. I went, okay, he
Yeah.
rebelled. I'm like, that was interesting. So I
Yeah.
stuck with me and I said, why can't I have caramel?
Yeah.
So I've actually changed my viewpoint. I became hyper successful after I went from saving money to focusing on just generating cash. And that was a whole
Mhm.
pivot. When
Mhm.
you think of money, because I know your story, but tell the
Mhm.
audience, and especially the gumball one and what happened there.
Yeah.
But like when you think of money, what's your first initial feeling? What do you
Mm.
get? Like I have a different feeling than what I describe right now, and I'll talk about that. But what do you feel when
Mhm.
I say money, acquiring it? What do you feel emotionally? What goes
Mhm.
through your head? And how do you view it now differently than you used to in the past? I want to hear about you because you've written a
Mhm.
book, you have a finance channel. Have
Yeah.
you changed?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think similar background in terms of how my parents managed money. We were, kind of lower income, very frugal. Saving was, and also we come from a Catholic background. And so, kind of like that idea of like poverty as a virtue and kind of, wealth was kind of thought of something that, well, you probably did something bad to get there or something like that. So that
Right.
was never really a discussion of, oh, yeah, if you just invest, you can build wealth or it's possible. It was always, be grateful for what you have and, minimalism and things like that. And so, although there's some really good things, again, that now I've kind of picked and choose what works for me and what I want to continue with as an adult, it is good to save money. It is, good to live within your means and be humble and those kinds of things. However, if you just do those things, it's not going to be enough. And you are going to kind of be in maybe a financial situation where you're retired. And my biggest fear, I think, especially looking at my grandparents who did the best they could and they did better than previous generations because there was a lot of poverty generationally in my family on both sides. There's just poverty everywhere. They did the best out of all of those generations, but they were still living very frugally. And I never want to be would look at them and I'm like, I never wanna be that old and be that concerned about money still. I don't wanna be worried at 60 or
Uh,
70 about the cost of butter, you know? And so I want a different life, and that started kind of the shift in my brain of like, okay, I need to learn about how to not just save and stay out of debt and budget. I need to learn how to build wealth and invest it and do these other things and increase my income and things like that. Um, but beyond that, what I do talk about in the book as well is it took a while for me to figure out a healthy reason for doing that because I think I was running on a certain I talk a lot about trauma in the book as well. The reason I was chasing some of these things wasn't just this fear of like not having enough, which is, still something that I work on. I was also trying to fill another need, which was, I want to be successful. I want to have money. So, all the people that hurt me when I was younger, all those kind of childhood traumas I have, those will be solved because I'll have all the things that, I didn't have growing up. And I realized while writing the book and doing a lot of introspection and therapy, that's not a healthy reason why. And we probably see that too. A lot of real examples of really wealthy people And it's like, why are they making certain decisions? You think they'd be happy. They have all this money, they have all this power and success, and they're obviously miserable. Is because they haven't figured out what's actually been driving them towards this point. So I don't want to just be in a position where I'm building wealth and I have financial security and I feel successful and fulfilled. I want to do it for the right reasons and feel good about it. I don't want to do it for anyone else, for what people think about me. I want to do it for me. And so I've had a big shift mentally on the why I'm doing this. And have to, yeah, kind of when I do get triggered, for example, if there's lots of talk, always talk, the economy's collapsing, unemployment, the world's on fire, literally all the time. And I often get journalists being like, oh, can you come on, this radio station or this TV station to talk about it? And I'm always happy to, but honestly, part of it is just like, oh my God, is this it? Is this the big one? And I can't help but feel like, oh gosh, what if this is, everything, the stock market collapses, I lose all my money, I have to move out of my house. All these things always run through my mind. And so I have to actively work on that. Be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Remember what we learned about ourselves and our past. These are just some of our kind of generational traumas and things that flare up when there's something that kind of triggers it, but it isn't based off reality or logic. So we need to check ourselves, because that's not a healthy way to live. And I don't like living in a place of that scarcity, of thinking that everything is going to go away, because historically it's not going to all go away. And I have so many safety nets that, I'll be able to figure it out. If I can't do this job for whatever reason in the future, I'm sure I can figure out another way to make money or get a job or something like that. So it's, as I kind of say in the book, there's no like medicine or cure or solution that you're like, great, I'm healed. It
Uh-huh.
is a practice when you have some of these things inside you that is taking you a while to really understand are there. So there will be flare ups, and you do have to kind of have the tools so you can get yourself back and ground yourself again.
There's a couple of things I want to unpack. You're
Yeah, let's
you're
unpack that.
so there's a common theme there of self-talk, of you going,
Oh, yeah.
sometimes your self-talk goes negative and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, what the hell, the world gonna blow up and is the economy gonna collapse, what do I
Yeah.
do? Or then your self-talk happened where you went, well, I can always work and get another job and make my money back.
Yeah.
Um
It's a lot of
but I
talk in this head, let me tell you.
I think that's the problem with a lot of first, there's a lot of let's anchor on self-talk for a bit. So self-talk when it comes to dealing with crisis.
Mhm.
Let's talk a bit about this. So we're gonna be all over the place here with the guy with this podcast. So I'm a firm believer in when you don't have those mechanisms, like my person in my head, for the most part, almost all the time, is completely delusional, thinks I'm awesome all the time. And the world can, I'm being honest, the world could go to shit and I could lose all my money and I'll just go, whatever, I'll just make more. Like that's it.
Interesting.
Like
Yeah.
that's it. There's nothing in my brain that goes, you can't, right? But it
Mhm.
didn't start that way. It was earned.
No,
It,
yeah.
but it did start from a place of delusion where I didn't have anything. I was in debt. My health was just
Yeah.
horrible.
Mhm.
As people on my channel know about it. But the only way to get out of it was I realized I know what to talk to. I was alone. And I just said,
Mhm.
I'm going to delude myself into thinking I'm unstoppable. I'm going to delude myself into being healthy. I'm going to delude myself into making $1 million. I'm going to completely delusional. Eventually that self-talk turned into the actual voice in my head. And
Mm.
while I was deluding myself, I was taking actions to achieve this stuff.
Mhm.
Now, I don't think anyone's born super confident. I don't think most
No.
people are born achiever. I think all of this is earned. All that self-talk is
Yeah.
earned. Um, that's just sort of what I'm saying. So you still struggle with that today? Like you still fall back
Oh,
and
yeah.
forth, but over time, though, has that other voice, that stronger voice, taken more real estate in your mind?
Oh my God,
And
yeah.
how do you feel about what I said of it's something that has to be earned and it's something that has to be
Yes.
practiced, even when you're lying to yourself? You're just
Yep.
telling yourself this, just so it overtakes. It becomes your like talk.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on what I just said?
Yeah, no, when it comes to confidence in general, but also financial confidence, and that's something I struggled with a lot of, especially as I was starting out in my 20s. I'd say like that decade in my 20s was a very big learning journey of like, who am I? Because also my background isn't traditionally in finance. I went to film school. I thought I was going to be a filmmaker and artiste and all this kind of stuff. And then the stock market crash, the recession happened right when I was graduating. It kind of changed my whole worldview. I thought I was entering kind of a safe, world where I can find, a nice job and live my life finally free. And it was like, sorry, there's no money. Everyone lost all their money and there's no jobs. And you're like, well, this was not what I signed up for. And so that was like the first big shift, and I think rocked my confidence, because I did have a lot of confidence in university because I was doing really well in film school. I had like my graduation film, went to a number of big film festivals. I thought I was awesome. And then that happened and I'm like, oh, okay. So the world is actually a little bit harder than we expected. um, but then slowly, as I started educating myself about money, because I think when you don't know about money, like how it works and just all the resources at your disposal, and all the just tips and tricks out there that are pretty much the same, for the past 50 years, they're really not that complicated. Once you really understand that, then the kind of mysticism of money, the veil gets lifted. And you're like, oh, that's not rocket science. That's not that
Yeah.
hard. I can learn this stuff. This isn't crazy. But for the longest time, until I really kind of built that confidence and got that literacy, I always thought I was limited in a certain respect. Investing and wealth building and earning potential were big barriers for me, because again, also I came from, family on both sides, generationally. Everyone had jobs. We worked really hard. We never earned that much money. And so I
Uh-huh.
thought that was my future as well, because it's hard to see yourself in a different position when you look at your family and no one's done it before. I know lots of people are like, oh, I'm going to be the first one. Well, it's like, that's again, you have to be kind of delusional to think you're going to change the cycle of all these generations that have never been able to do it. Um, and so I started, learning more about money and what the possibilities were. And the other thing I think that really helped as well was getting to know other people in the kind of financial community, and learning about their stories, and especially seeing their successes. And there were people just like you. And you're like, oh, they don't have a crazy story, all these flashy stories you see on TikTok. I made $1 million in like a year. And you're like, I don't think I can do that. But
No.
seeing regular people be able to build wealth slowly was actually really inspirational to me, because that seemed attainable. And again, the math worked out. You're like, oh no, that is actually realistic. I actually can do that if I do X, Y, and Z. So for me, it was a long journey. And again, the writing the book and doing all this self-work, because before I wrote the book, I actually didn't think I had any issues with money. I thought it was totally fine. And then I am like, oh, actually, there's a lot of unhealthy bits we need to work through. So it comes with education. It comes with, being around people who lift you up, who are supportive, that you can see yourselves in, that are doing good things. You're like, oh, if they're doing it, I think I actually can do it too. And then just like life experience. Like, I'm 39 right now, and I don't think I've ever been as calm and confident ever in my life. And it's because I've, again, really figured out my why, my what do I want for my future, and really, again, focusing on me and not, the comparison, the social comparison. Like, what does, someone else have? Because when you get lost in that, you're never going to be satisfied. And then I really did get lost in that, I think, in my early 30s, really honing in on when I was, newly self-employed, and following all the hustle culture stuff. I'm like, oh, I just need to work harder. Da, da, da. And then you get burnt out, and then you get, disillusioned. You're like, maybe it's not possible. And you're like, I think that's just not the path. I think it's just not healthy. You need to figure out what you want and what your needs are, and honestly just ignore the rest, because it's like, it's crazy to compare yourself to someone else, because you don't know anything about what got them there, maybe all the privileges they have that you don't know about. And also, are they actually happy? No idea. And maybe we have different definitions of happy.
Very different. Everyone does.
Right?
There's such variance, and I think that's where depression by comparison comes into play.
Ugh.
First, social media. We're both on social media. It's bullshit. I'm
I
in
hate If
advertising.
I didn't have to be on social media for my business, I would not.
Yeah,
I would be living
I
my
think
life off social media, let me tell you.
I like the podcast part of my job. I'll be honest. I
Yeah,
like talking to you.
it's
This is
great talking
actually
to people.
I do this purely because I want to do this part of it, but it's hard for me. It's painful for me to get on Instagram and stuff like that. It's just not. And I'm in advertising 15 years.
Yeah.
Very quickly, we're both 39 years old.
Yep.
So there you go. Same
Yeah,
age.
look at us. Look at us young babies with these beautiful
Yeah,
faces.
look at that. I got a lot of gray hairs, to be honest. I started aging real fast after I had my kids. So, there's also just bear with me here while I go through a lot of this stuff in my head. So a couple things. I notice debt for a lot of people that I deal with is
Mm,
because of comparison. It's keeping up with the
yeah.
Joneses. You sort of mentioned, that even your parents, like a lot of our parents did it in different ways.
Mhm.
My parents in the Indian community have a way of doing it
Mhm.
where they try to keep up with their peers. It's just their
Mhm.
unique way, but they're not trying to do it. It's just like subconscious. They don't know they're
Yeah.
doing it. Um, and that leads to debt. You'll see that with especially
Mhm.
younger people. They'll buy stuff they can't afford. They're living paycheck to paycheck, all of that. Now, luckily, I never had that.
Mhm.
But I feel like that's a big portion of why people fall in debt, have bad spending habits, can't invest. I always am like, why are you even watching my investing channel if you're leasing a car for $800 a month and you're doing all this
Yeah.
crazy stuff? It's like, you have no money to invest? It's like, get that figured out first.
Yeah.
You've talked to a lot of
That's what's
people.
really holding you back, that 20% interest on that credit card. It's not, "Oh, I just need to learn how to invest." I'm like, let's just figure, point A first before going to point B."
Well, you talk to a lot of people. What's the pushback when you talk to people? Because I try to talk about it on the
Yeah.
channel. Nobody wants to hear about it. They say, tell me to make money. And I'm like, well, I can't tell you to make money if you have none. Right. So,
Well, you know what? I think that's interesting. I think, the core of the majority of my audience, and a lot of them have kinda grown up with me because I started blogging 13 plus years ago, almost 14 years ago. And, predominantly when I started, I was talking about debt, saving, budgeting, cash flow, those kind of main, elements. So I don't get a lot of pushback about those topics too much, but I can absolutely see where audience members who come to you for wealth building, investing knowledge, they're like, "I don't wanna talk about that because it's not sexy."
yeah.
It's, like, kind of conflicting with the identity or the idea of who I wanna be. Um, there's a lot of shame and, it's just like it's just an uncomfortable thing to talk about, because no one talks about debt. It's very shameful still. Like, I don't believe you should be ashamed for being in debt. It's just a financial situation that you can get yourself out of, but a lot of people judge others for like, "Oh, you have debt? Well, that's because you're quote unquote bad with money," which is really just like, well, you made certain choices and yeah, they may not be, putting you in a great position right now. That doesn't mean that you yourself are a bad person or you can't learn how to undo this and fix this. And so I think people are probably pushing against you, be like, I don't want to talk about cash flow or debt or, getting a handle on my expenses or really getting to know my spending. I just want to learn how to invest. It's because that's a lot easier for them, I think, to just rationalize their choices. And because they don't have to make any changes. And so I will say, when I do work with individuals, the hardest part is changing or telling them you do have to change your behaviors. I often get, DMs and emails from people, especially too, people in their like 50s and up that are like, "Hey, is it too late for me to start investing? I, spent all my time getting the house, raising kids, all this stuff, and now I figure, oh shoot, I have to save for retirement." I'm like, no, it's never too late. However, the unfortunate thing is you either need time or money, ideally both. If you don't have time, then you need more money to invest to get to the same point at which if you started investing like 20 years ago. And no one likes to hear that because they are hoping that it would give them a different answer. But I mean, I'm sorry, that's just the math. The math doesn't lie, the
Yeah.
numbers are lied. It has to be one or the other. But I think people want a solution in which they can continue living their lifestyle right now because it's comfortable. No one wants to change their behaviors and admit that maybe they didn't make some of the best choices for their finances because again, then they're admitting that maybe they did something wrong or their behaviors aren't maybe the best.
I want to break down both our psychological profiles a bit here
Okay.
because because people a lot of time when they watch a podcast they'll be like, okay, I saw myself in Gary or I saw myself in the guest that relates to me. I feel like you're over here in a good way and I'm over here in a good way. A lot of our users will fall somewhere in that
Mhm.
spectrum so they can see a little bit. Okay, so from reading through your book, I feel like you're overachiever, you work really hard, type A personality,
Yeah,
you get SHIT done, right?
I do.
So if I'm miss tell me and then correct me and you just correct me wherever I'm wrong. So it's like things happen, you work hard, you get those things. When roadblocks happen, maybe in the past they're like, whoa, what the hell? And
Mm,
maybe they turn you for a loop, maybe a little bit more than it should because you're
mhm.
just not used to it. You're so used to pop, 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 right?
Yeah,
So your problems maybe in life have been when that happens, how do you deal with that thing,
yeah,
negate it emotionally, intelligently, think through it, and push
yeah.
forward. Now, my personality is chronic underachiever. constantly failing throughout my life. I rarely see success. It's been one thing after another to the point where I'm being completely honest. Not gifted physically, not gifted intellectually. I'm basically, you open up the dictionary of like average.
Yeah.
In grade four, I got straight C minuses. They called me below average boy. So I've always been so subpar. So
Mm,
I learned from an early age. I was like, okay, well, that's good to know. So I managed my expectations and I went, well, I just like doing stuff. So I'm just going to try really hard. I'm just curious.
yeah.
I'm just going to do it anyways. And I'll get no credit for anything. And I won't get
Mhm.
any of my goals. So everything I do moving forward will just because I want to do it.
Mhm.
And then I learned very early on because I got picked on a lot. I got bullied a lot and I was very, very quiet. Oh, that's okay. People just do that. So I was very sort of like cool with people. I was like, oh, I get it. Some people just pick on people. And I was very like good that
Mhm.
way. So when roadblocks happen, health, financial, anything, I rarely had a moment of like, oh my God, I went, oh, okay. Well, how do I fix this? Okay, I'll just do that. Oh, and I
Mm.
move past it. And then fail for years on end. I'm like, oh, now I'm here. And I look back, I'm like in a different position. And then that's
Mhm.
always been my brain. And it's not something I tried, nothing I will together. It's just from 40 years of just
Yeah.
everything being technically difficult, but for me, it's just my norm and I don't care and it doesn't bother me at this point. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. And I always feel like that's my superpower is like I'm very good at failing, like
Yeah.
very good at failing,
You're very good at
where
adjusting or pivoting, and maybe not
doesn't
even
bother
like,
me.
do you ever label
Yeah.
those things, those occurrences as actual failures in the moment?
No, no,
No,
I
you're
still,
just
oh,
like,
why did I?
"Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
that's the wrong direction. I'll take a left instead of a right."
I do the same for criticism, by the
Yeah.
way. So
Mhm.
someone's like, "Hey, you suck." I go, "Oh, maybe I did suck in that moment." Sometimes people are right. I do suck sometimes, right? So, but so I see that as my power. So I didn't have a
Yeah.
strength there. What I
Yeah, that's
lacked
a
in
big
a lot
strength.
of other things like that was my thing. Your
Yeah.
superpower is you know how to get stuff done. And what I built over the years, like workflows and systems, and surround myself with all these smart people, and that's where I'm at.
Yep.
How did I think I outlined your superpower, getting things done, overachiever, very focused, driven, all of that.
Very, yeah.
How did you then negate the other part of, oh, something just went completely wrong. You did not get what you wanted. Now it's a roadblock.
Yeah, so it's funny that, I would say even though I am like kind of type A, overachiever, always been ambitious, always wanted to push myself, I have also at the same time consider myself very average. I know I'm not the smartest person in any room. I know that to be
Mm-hmm.
true. But I've always known, okay, that's fine. I'll just work like 50% harder to get to that smart person's level where they're like, there's some people in school where they're like, I hardly studied and I got an A. I'm like, cool. I studied really hard, Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
tried
yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
hard to get the same result. So that's me, you know, um, especially in the financial space because I've always had this little imposter syndrome because I did come from the arts world and I'm a writer and all of the skills I learned in that world are so helpful for me now. But when I've had to do some like the traditional coursework or be in some of those rooms, people talking about jargon, oh, I feel like the biggest idiot. So I feel like I would label my superpower though as maybe not thinking that I can do something or it's not going to be easy and doing it anyway. And I've done that
Mm,
I don't know where that stemmed from. I think it started probably after film school when I did kind of feel like a failure because I'm like, oh, like I kind of ended on a high. I had my movie in all these festivals. I got some distribution. It was like on the Air Canada flights and stuff. Like, I'm a rock star compared to all of my peers. And then you finish film school and you're out in the world. And I was like unemployed for a year and I couldn't even get a receptionist job. Like I felt like such a loser because of there was, just the economy at that time. That was really humbling. And then I realized, well, there's something in me. I've always had this, like, I feel like I meant for something bigger. Like I know I'm not going to be satisfied with just like an average life, whatever that means. I just push myself anyway. And so I have always thought that I'm the most average person in the room, but I'll work harder than anybody. Or, I'm sure lots of people think like that, but that's what's always been my driving force is like, just do it anyway. Even if you fail, at least you tried. And that's, I guess, another thing too is one of my biggest fears is regret. I don't like the idea of time passing and looking back. You're like, oh, I wish I did that when I
that's
said
it.
I was going to. That drives me crazy. And so I'm always pushing myself to do the thing, even if it may take me a long time. I may have to work really harder or harder than that, a smarter person than me and just do the hell, whatever. And it's gotten me pretty far. So I'm just
Yeah,
going to keep
yeah.
doing that forever and kind of sometimes feel like I got away with something. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I got here. Cool.
that looking back and regret thing, I don't know if you've had this thought. I've looked back at maybe something I thought was a big decision in a moment, and I froze and I didn't do it. And then now I'm older, I'm going, why did I make such a big deal out of that? That was
Yeah.
crazy. I should have just done the thing. But
Yeah.
that feeling of like, God damn it, that's such a small thing has now internalized so much to the point where I'm like, I just do shit. 'Cause it's like, I
Mhm.
know it doesn't matter. It does not matter. It actually,
Yeah.
the outcome, like, if I feel embarrassed, whatever, in the moment, I'll actually forget about this moment.
Oh,
Anyways, I'll
totally.
move on with my life. It's like that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk a little bit more about like keeping up with the Joneses a bit, just because I feel
Mm.
like this is where a lot of people get into debt, and all that kind of stuff happens. And I mentioned before, how many people do come to you with that as being the root cause of why they're not where they're supposed to be? That simple thing
Yeah.
of I just want to fit in. I just
Mm.
want to look equal to my peers.
Mhm.
I want an Instagram lifestyle. And what do you think? I have my opinions on this. How do you think if social media has affected all that,
Oh,
especially for
yeah.
younger people?
Social media is can be so great in so many respects. However, it's, taken before social media, we were comparing ourselves to our classmates, our coworkers, our neighbors, our communities. And we're still playing the comparison game, like, "Oh, look at Joe, across the street, he's got a nice car, we should get a nicer car." Now we're comparing ourselves to people we'll never meet, who live in a different country, who
Yeah.
have, again, all these privileges or this access that we don't even understand, and we're comparing ourselves to be it's completely illogical. At least when you're comparing yourself to your neighbor, you're like, "Well, we could both afford to be in this neighborhood, I guess." So there's a little bit of a connection there, but if you're comparing yourself to some model influencer in Dubai who's earning $20,000 a month. You're like, why am I even comparing myself to that person? I'll never meet them. We have completely different lives. This doesn't make any sense. But we are doing it on loop, spending so many hours on social media. It's impossible not to play this game. And so that's really a concern, especially I say more for younger people. I feel like older
Mm.
people may, who maybe are later adopters, not so much, but seeing that there's kids, there's teenagers that have been on social media their whole lives or been able to access it. And some young people I've even heard, they're like, "Oh, my dream is to become an influencer as a career." I'm like, that is crazy. Because it's wild that this is even a job. But in terms of like when people come to me with their financial issues, they'll never say it's because, "Oh, I'm spending too much money because I'm playing the social comparison game," and because they won't know that that's what they're doing. That's a very internal unconscious thing that you just think that well, no, I'm just living my life and this is what I want to do. You may just not know actually why you're doing it. So most of the time when we do the uncomfortable bit of like, let's take a look at your spending, and then we go line by line, like, well, what's this? Well, they'll always have an excuse. And when you really dig into that excuse, you're like, okay, so what it sounds like is
Yeah.
this actually isn't something that you value, you can afford, you even want. You're doing it for another reason that maybe you haven't actually had a moment to really think about. And most of the time, like, oh, yeah, I guess I could live without that. And so the social comparison is definitely, I think, worse than it was. And not only that, it's never been easier in the world to spend money because you can do it on your phone with Apple Pay. You can use one of those buy now, pay later things that are now on like pretty much every online checkout cart. It is, and there's also, I talk about this in the book, there's no pain of paying anymore. Before, when we used cash, there was a bit of a psychological pain. It's out of your wallet, it's out of your bank account. You no longer have that money. We're using, Apple Pay on our credit cards, tapping. We don't even see the balance. We're not even looking at the number. And then if you don't look at your spending or your credit card statements, it can get out of hand so rapidly because you have no concept of what's actually happening. You're not even doing the mental accounting of like, okay, this amount of money spent. You're not even able to do that anymore because you're not even seeing the number, which is very scary.
That's all emotional. This gets back to your book again. You see everything but money.
Yeah.
Plug to the book.
Yeah.
That, what but it's all emotional because people they didn't ask themselves the why.
Mm,
Why am I doing this?
yeah.
And is this valuable to me? Because you just said that. You said, are they asking, is this valuable to me? I had a guest on. He's in his 50s, Darren, the Crazy Connect. He's a YouTuber, and we talked about that. We're like, we're both very frugal guys.
Mhm.
We're kind of like, but we still spend on stuff. Like I like spending on
Mhm.
nice dinners. I have a
Mhm.
lot of random things I do. Like I have every streaming service because I used to go to Blockbuster as a kid, and that's the
Yeah,
closest
I
you can
I
get.
used to work at Blockbuster. That was one of the best jobs I've ever had as a teen. It was great. I miss
Hey,
it.
but I used to always fail because I applied to Blockbuster like 10 times and they never hired me. See,
No, I'm
you
sorry.
here,
I mean,
I
you would have
here.
lost your job anyway,
I
so
would
it
have lost my
closed.
job. Yeah.
I lost my job because
But
it
that's what
went
I was like.
bankrupt, so
I pegged us perfectly. I pegged us perfectly. I applied so many times and never hired me.
Oh.
But I used to always browse there. So close second get is like browsing on Netflix and stuff. And never
Yeah,
even watching a movie, just watching.
yeah.
But we kind of pick things and like I go on nice vacations with my family, right?
Mhm.
But we don't buy random stuff. And it's like
Mm-mm.
asking yourself that why. And
Yeah.
I remember, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, when I was making, like, I make good money. I made good money for a while now, but before when I was making under 50K a year,
Mhm.
well under, at some points under 40K, I still never stressed out about money. I never
Really?
had money stress. I never had to. I always lived below my means,
Yeah.
a notch or two. I always only bought things that I cared about. I never
Mhm.
this here
Great
and
sweater.
this. Yeah, I've had it for 20 years.
Love that.
I haven't upgraded my wardrobe. You go if you get a chance to go through some of my YouTube videos. I'm wearing the same stuff. I've been wearing
He's
the
like,
same
"He's
stuff for
wearing that
20 years.
sweater."
Everyone says it because I haven't bought clothing in forever.
And
Because
who
I'm like,
cares,
oh,
right? Yeah, who
I,
cares?
I bought these like in high school, and I was like, I like cardigans, and I just keep wearing cardigans. So I wear a lot of the
Love
same
a
stuff I wear in like
cardigan.
high school in my 20s. So they don't got a style.
Yeah,
So that's why,
they
and they're
don't.
comfy. But it was like stuff like that. So even when I was
Yeah.
making under 50, I had this is harder, and I got to preface this: rent is not the same as it was when I was
Oh, no.
renting. So
No, it's
okay,
not.
like so there's nothing you can do about that. I get that, but for all the other stuff, I was still living below my means. I was just eating like whatever I thought was healthy. I'd cook at home. I was never
Mhm.
eating out. And when I'd go out with friends, I found the cheapest possible way to do it. Right? And
Yeah.
that was it. And I was able to like never be stressed out about money because I
Mhm.
always knew I had enough. I had savings. I
Yeah.
was still starting to invest, so I was always good. And then as I got made more money, there was no lifestyle inflation.
Yeah, 'cause
Nothing
you're like, "Well,
changed.
I was already happy doing that, and I was
I didn't.
already so why would I spend more? Because I know it's not gonna make me happier."
I didn't need anything.
Yeah, you didn't
I
need
would just
anything. Yeah.
I'd upgrade my laptop every other year because I work from a laptop, and that was really about it. And my lifestyle inflation only happened when I had children because children
Mhm.
are automatic, and it's like okay, and then you kind of go like I want to give them the best. And
Yeah.
then you kind of because it's like whatever. And it's a
Yeah.
little bit different, but I never had lifestyle inflation.
Yeah.
Speak about that because I know lots of people who are making six figures, some people making seven figures, who still are complaining about money. Like, oh my god, I don't have
Yeah.
enough, and but they're spending shit tons,
Can you
and they're like
imagine
their lives.
earning multiple six figures and being worried about money when most
Yeah,
people in the median, I was just looking at this up the other day, the median income of a Canadian is $74,000, which when you think about like the cost of like housing, all that stuff, like, hey, that's not a ton of money. It's not what it used to be. But to hear someone, and I used to, story years ago, so over 8 years ago, I used to work at a big Bay Street law firm in marketing, and I would get some of the scoop from some people in certain departments about some of the lawyers, and some of the lawyers would go to this department and be like, "Hey, could you give me an advance? Or is there a deal I can get on my cell phone? I can't afford it." These lawyers were making multiple six figures, way more than I
yeah,
was making at that law firm. And I'm like, am I in a better financial position than some of these lawyers who've been here for 20 years that are, and it's because of the lifestyle. They would just spend all of their money on Bay Street. And so I completely understand where you're coming from. It's, you know, to be secure and happy with your money, you have to define what that means for yourself. And that comes with having clarity with where money coming in, money going out. You need to be in control of that and understand what is happening. And most specifically, define when I do spend money, what do I want it to spend that money on? What actually makes me happy and fulfilled? And some of those things might be like a little bougie, like I do like nice dinners and things like, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as again you're like, but I can afford it. I've got the system that allows me to afford it, and we're all good. But again, when you get into a pattern of spending money for basically other people or other people's attention, you're always going to kind of feel like, oh, I don't know why I spent my money on that. That's a bit of a regret because it's not for you, it's for others. So,
yeah.
you earn your money for you. You need to spend it for yourself as well. So I'm completely in alignment. When I look at my husband's spending, it isn't too off from where we were, say, 10 years ago. Yeah, we spend more on, say, groceries and, yeah, eating out and stuff like that. But those are things that make us really happy. And like, hobbies and books or we live right near a comedy place, and we love seeing comedy and stand up. And, we'll go there, once or twice a month. And it's like, amazing. Maybe we wouldn't be able to afford that back in our 20s when we're kind of broke, but now we're like, oh, we can afford that. But I would never, we're still driving around the same car he's had for like, I think it was 15 or 16 years. It's totally fine. And yeah, it's ugly, but who gives a crap because
Yeah.
it's paid off. And I don't need a flashy car. Like that it won't make us happier. And same with like buying designer clothes or, sure, I can spend a lot more money on clothes, but I'm like, I work from home
Yeah,
and I
that's the
rarely
thing.
go out. So I have a few outfits, but otherwise I don't need to like go crazy every season and get a new wardrobe, but I know that's not going to make me happy. What does make me happy is spending the money intentionally, but also what makes me more happy is when I track my net worth every month, seeing that number increase, because that makes me feel like all the hard work I'm doing, saving, investing, earning income, all that kind of stuff, it's all worth it because I see there's progress over time. That makes me feel really good.
Just like a side question, what do you put more when you're looking just about finances? Put more emphasis on your net worth or your income flow you have coming in monthly? What do you look
I'd
at
say
more?
at the start it's got to be your income because that is how you can increase your net worth substantially, right? There's going to be a certain level where you're like, well, we've cut back everywhere else. Then there's a certain trajectory of like, well, this is pretty much how much we could increase your net worth by every month, every year based off your income. But if you can increase your income by 20 or 50% or whatever the case is, then we're going to be able to make some really big strides. So it's like, first, let's get the foundational things. Let's get those habits locked down and you've got your value system and all that kind of stuff, and then once you're there, then it's really about, okay, the next step is income. Because the one thing I was actually doing this calculation, I'm going to make a video about it soon. I saw someone post on social media being like, oh my gosh, I was able to increase my net worth from $100,000 to $1 million in 6 years. And I'm like, oh, I need to do the math on that because I looked at the description. They're not showing their work. So I'm like, I'm going to do the math on that. Did the math with, a bunch of assumptions and came to the conclusion that they had to invest something like six or $7,000 per month. No, what was it? It's like $74,000 per year or something like that. Maybe I'll try to pull it up because I was just like, yeah, most people don't have that kind of extra money lying
Yeah.
around to get. Oh yeah, so it was they would have to contribute about $7,000 every single month to their investments for 6 years to go from six figures to $1 million. So it's not that you're the smartest investor in the world. It's because you have money. You've got income. And that's what you're not talking about. Most people don't have an extra 7 grand per month to just invest. But yeah, that is the way that you can increase your wealth and get to those big numbers quickly is income. That's the thing that I feel like no one talks about. Whenever I see people on social media talking about, look at me, I'm such a smart investor by my investing course, I was able to become a millionaire. How did they get there so quickly? Probably by selling that course and making a lot of money. And so they have more disposable income to invest.
Yeah, that's very true. Do you think do you think the outline then for someone for like a financial strategist is very like rough outline is check if you're in debt. If you're in debt, ask yourself the why am I in debt? Get to that root cause
Yeah.
of why it is. Once you figure out what that root cause is, then you can go, okay, I got to address that with a probably with a counselor or therapist,
Yeah.
someone who can help you. You
Yeah.
need to talk to somebody because
Yeah.
it's probably deeper than what you can't handle it by yourself. Or maybe you
Hmm.
can, I don't know. But talk to somebody.
Hmm.
And then put together a financial plan of how do I pay it down. You pay down high interest credit card debt first. That's what I
Hmm.
would do at least.
Yeah.
Get all that off your plate. Once you get the debt down, then you go, all right, great. Now I'm going to start investing into my tax shelter accounts as
Hmm.
much as I can afford every single month because I brought down all my costs in my life
Yeah.
everywhere. But you understand this is a long-term investment. Whatever you invest, you're not going to need, and you won't need it because you now have a runway fund
Hmm.
too. You have money that's just sitting there for 3 to 6 months worth of
Yeah.
expenses as well. And now that's just what you do every day. And then you just focus on enjoying your life in the moment and enjoy life in the moment and also increase your income in whatever you do.
Yeah.
Get a raise, start a business, start a side hustle, do that. Use whatever more is left over on that to funnel into that index fund. Most likely an index
Yeah.
fund on individual stock.
Yeah.
And buy an XQT or a VFV or whatever, some sort of index fund, and then chill. And that's the
Yeah.
strategy. That's it. And that's a YouTube video. I don't have a YouTube channel anymore. No, none of us have YouTube channels. That's the video. That's how you do it. And it's essentially it, right? But then,
Pretty much.
you
I
know,
mean, it's easy when you say it like that because it's like, no, I completely agree. That is pretty much the strategy. I would say while you're paying off debt, we also want to get that emergency fund. It's basically like at the same time because I see
yeah, that's what I
bad
did.
advice all the time, being like, pay off your debt and then focus on the emergency fund, or only have $1,000 in your emergency fund, pay off your debt, then focus back on the emergency fund. I'm like, $1,000 isn't going to go anywhere. And if you don't have an emergency savings, something happens, you're going to get back into debt. But yeah, it's like debt first, savings, investing, earning income. And I'd say the other kind of point to that is always, yeah, really doing that self work on your behaviors and your money story and really figuring out all that kind of internal stuff. The other thing that I feel like, again, doesn't get talked about enough because it is boring is you've got to be patient. You got to learn patience and you got to wait. You got to play the waiting game. Everyone wants
Yeah.
everything right now or as soon as possible. But for me, it's a really about like having that strategy and sticking with it for like, if you stick with it for 5 years, you're going to see some progress. If you stick with it for 10 years, you're like, holy crap, what happened in that extra 5 years? Like that's where the
Yeah.
compounding but again, if you don't stick with it and are patient, and that's what no one wants to do. No one wants to just like, yeah, like index and
If you
chill. It sounds boring. And you're like, it is, but it works.
Yeah, you don't have to be a stock picker. If you just obsess about paying down your debt, building an emergency fund, and increasing your monthly income by any means necessary, you're golden. Make
Yeah.
that your obsession. Picking stocks is hard, so don't even bother with that. It's
Exactly. I mean, I always point people to the Spiva scorecard that shows all these very
uh,
intelligent,
uh,
fund managers. And, every year it's like 80% of them don't beat the stock market, don't even match the stock market. So why do you think you're smarter than all of these people who are CFAs and have all these credentials and do this for a living? I don't know. So I'm an
yeah,
index investor and that's done really well for me. I've interviewed so many people on my podcast, all these really smart investors, and most of them were like, but honestly, index investing is pretty great for most people. I'm like, yeah, exactly.
yeah,
But
it is.
hey,
It's
you do what you want to do, but indexing is a really, really great pathway.
I want to pivot into another obstacle you talk about. It's if I have it right, like invisible obstacles that people can come across in
Yeah.
their life. Talk a bit about that. Let's dissect that a bit.
hmm
So,
So one thing we have not touched on, especially when it comes to the income issue, is it's a lot. Everything we just said makes sense and it works. It's just the implementation can be very difficult because it may not be so easy to do those things. Again, there's like the behavioral, the psychological issues when it comes to spending within your means, sticking to a budget, because some people have a hard time doing that. You can figure that out working with a financial professional and a therapist. There's ways to do that. But the other side of it is when it comes to earning, which again is sometimes that's the thing that's really going to move the needle, and you're really going to see the jump from like six figures to now you're a millionaire, is depending on who you are, there may be some societal barriers that are going to just make it a lot harder for you to earn more compared to your neighbor. And so if you are a person, basically there's people who have these inherent privileges and some people that don't. And those people unfortunately have to work twice as hard to get half as much. And it's been like that for a very long time. The data does not lie. There's a whole like part of like the end of my book, all of the references and all the data points. It's very thick because there's so much evidence to show that if you're a person of color, if you're a woman, if you have a disability, all these kind of things, unfortunately, it is going to be harder for you to earn the same amount as like a cis white man. That's just how it goes. And it's unfortunately, we're not really, when we look at the numbers, especially seeing what's going on in the US, a lot of the things that were put in place to kind of equalize things and make things more equitable are being torn down. So we're kind of like going back a little bit. And those are things that unfortunately you as an individual can't really do much about. Obviously, there's a couple of things you can do if you're working with a company that you can see, wow, they keep on giving promotions to that guy and not me, even though I'm more qualified, I have more experience, I've proven myself. Maybe this is a discriminatory work environment and I need to leave to go to a work environment that will support me. And that is something you can do. But when we look at the grand scheme of things and all these barriers and things that exist, sometimes you feel like you are powerless. The only thing we can do is keep going and just like my kind of mentality. And that's, I think, where some of it came from, is being a woman in finance, where it's very male dominated. I always felt like, no one took me seriously. So I'm like, well, I'm going to do it anyway and prove that I can do this. And so you've got to have that kind of warrior attitude and just do it anyway. And when you see that there's something unjust, we've got to come together to say like that's not okay. And we've seen a lot of good things over the past several years, like especially COVID, a lot of progress is made, but then a lot of progress is being undone. So it can be disillusioning, I get it, but at the end of the day, we just need to recognize it. If you're an ally, you need to speak out, and we just need to keep going. We can't just throw our hands up and be like, well, it's unfair. It is what it is. It's like, no, it doesn't always have to be like this. And it is a lot better than, say, 100 years ago,
Everything's better than
right?
100 years ago.
Yeah.
I did a joke. I at this thing one time. They're like, hey, if you could go back in history at any time, and I was
And
like,
you're like, no, thank you.
nowhere. I don't want to go.
No,
Maybe
thank
somewhere
you.
random in India. Maybe somewhere random in India, but like maybe like 800 years like before British colony.
Yeah.
But I'm good right now. Right now is the best time for me to live.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like, I don't want to go back in time because then I'm like, what were my grandparents doing? Or my
Yeah.
grandmothers. I'm like, oh my God, no. Like they
So
really didn't have an easy. No, thank you. I'm good with the future or the
so
present. Thank you.
So I'm going to talk to this just from my frame of reference. So before everyone disagrees with me, because I've had a lot of Indians disagree with me about this. My frame of reference is male Indian immigrant parents from
Mhm.
Punjab, from India, right? So obviously I've grown up with racism, I've grown up with all that kind of
Mm.
stuff. But I differ from people, and I remember that's my frame of reference. I cannot speak on women or other
Mhm.
races or
Mhm.
other
Mhm.
genders or whatever. Okay, so my thing is I hate it when people say I didn't get opportunity because of my race. I call bullshit on all of that all the way through.
Mm.
I don't I've never felt like some white guys holding me down. I never felt like, oh, those Caucasians, they're not giving me opportunity. Has someone probably not? Sure. Do I even notice? No. Do I even give a shit? No, because I'm
Mm.
trying to get the goddamn thing, whatever I'm working towards. I could go to India. There's more of us than there are of you, just so you know. You're
Yeah.
outnumbered, not us. And that's the truth. If you're an Asian,
Yeah.
between us and China, we're half the world's population. Colored
Mhm.
people outnumber white people. There is no weird hierarchy of the white person controls anything. For me and my brain to give one person, one race that much power over my future, is
Mhm.
dumb. Like, what do you think?
Mhm.
I just looked at it as like, do you think I'm that weak? Do you think I'm that pathetic that
Mm.
actually another person could stop me from getting what I want? That's impossible. I could
Mm.
never see some CEO of some company, some white male being like, we're not going to give him a job and I'll stop him. I'd be like, good luck. I'll go
Yeah.
work for your competitor. I'm going to go kill it over there and then crush you guys. That like,
Yeah.
why would it?
Yeah.
I just couldn't, I could never see any race, any person, any culture, anybody, even my own, having that much power over me and dictate anything about my
Mhm.
life. So it's never, I just never felt it. So whenever I
Mm.
hear, and I've heard this from other Indian guys, like, oh man, they're racist, they're racist. I'm like, you're just talking shit. And you're literally making excuses for your lack of success because you didn't try hard enough and push harder. Because, hey, guess what? Go to India, go join a billion other brown people, and go now jump into the caste system and religious differences. You're
Mm.
all the same color now, you're all the same race. And guess what? Now you're into class systems. Now you're
Yeah.
into religious differences. No matter where you go, if I'm a Caucasian, now I'm into probably income differences. I'm into you're this type of Christian, you're this type of thing.
Mhm.
I can cut up the pie 1,000 different ways and I can find an excuse anywhere I look. So for me I think to lean on racism did this, I go, yeah, get over it. That's not
Mm.
even a real thing. That's not even racism is this. I go for a job interview and when I'm walking out, I get lynched. That
Well,
sucks.
that's
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
pretty.
But that sucks. Okay.
Well,
If
yeah.
someone, if I go
But
job
racism
interview,
has there's
it's not,
levels.
yeah,
There's
but
levels, right?
it's not an excuse for lack of success. That's where I'm getting at. If
No,
it,
so what I will say about that is I think, and this could be the same thing like I talk about in the book about how if you have any kind of trauma that you haven't dealt with, that could be, something that is holding you back until you work through that. And a lot of people may think, well, that's an excuse for why you're not where you need to be. I think there's a difference between an excuse and an explanation. An excuse is this thing happened and so it is impossible. An explanation is, and I think this is kind of where you're at, you know, this happened. There are discriminatory, companies and people that will hold you down, whether you know it, you'll ever know it or not. These things exist. However, it's up to you how you're going to react. Are you going to let that stop you, or are you going to let that be like, fine, I'm going to show you. I'm going to keep going. And so I think it's important to be like, we've got to acknowledge that these things do exist. There are um, a lot of, people and companies, people that have power that are going to hold certain people down because of whether conscious or unconscious bias or just outright racism or sexism or whatever the case is, or, there's a lot of data I found for discrimination against people with disabilities, even when like, no, I'm perfectly able to do this job, but I'm just in a wheelchair, or I just have, this kind of, mental situation like ADHD or something like that. That doesn't mean I'm worse. It's just I'm different. And so we need to acknowledge that these things exist. However, we still need to be able to be like, even within this world that these things exist, I'm going to, venture through. I'm going to keep going because I don't. That's how you let those people win that are making it harder for people who are perpetuating these injustices. This discriminatory society is letting them win. Like, as if you're letting them go. Like, there was a story in my book of the professor who, dealt with very outright, racism. He applied for a master's program. He got rejected, even though he's fully qualified. And it was because this one professor who was the one in charge of approving students for the program, he rejected people of color because he was outright racist. And it wasn't until later, and he was thinking of, should I just give up and like, maybe not do that program? Maybe I should do a different career change. And then it wasn't until he like, no, I'm not, I'm gonna revisit this. And then that professor left the school. He talked to the replacement. They're like, oh, that's so weird. Actually, it's not that your application was rejected. It just wasn't even considered. Like, it was in a pile, never even, it was shuffled away. And then they're like, oh yeah, you're completely approved. You're in the program. And so it's not that he didn't work hard and use it as there literally was this person who was a barrier to him and other people of color from getting into this program, getting this master's degree to, move forward in their career. And now this guy is a professor himself. And so, he powered through. And that's what I really want to kind of talk about in the book is these things exist, but we can't let them exist like perpetually. We have to do something about it. And that means not using it as an excuse, but an explanation, and then keep going and figuring out another way to get to where we want to be.
I'm more speaking to people who use that excuse. Your professor powered through. That's
Yeah.
the main thing. And I'm just saying, I've dealt with racists from Asian people, Black people, Indians, people back at me, white people. It's all there. Some of the most racist people I know are East Indians. So like
Right.
it's just what am I supposed to do about that? It's everywhere, and everyone's going to disagree at some point. And I've had some people withhold jobs from me, not want to do what I've had Indian people go, "You're too white." I've had white people go, "You're too Indian." It's all dumb. So I go, whatever. It's for my brain, it just goes, I don't even play this game. I'm off my duty. And if you piss me off enough, like that guy, if he's not letting people in, the professor's like, hey, do you guys get rejected too? Let's go make a fuss and let's go tell everyone. Like, I'll just tell him, like, this guy is clearly not good at his job. He powered through quietly. Maybe I'll just be more vocal about it and then power through at the same time. Be like, this is ridiculous. Look at this guy. What a joke. And I just don't like normalizing. I think there's something, just as like a brown guy, for me personally, to feel like anyone has power over you is a dumb feeling.
Right.
I don't like it. I like when someone goes, oh, like I get admitting things are screwed up. I get admitting something happened, like not being ignorant to the fact like that was racist or that was horrible. I had a horrible childhood and that was all, man, you got to deal with that. You got to process it.
Yeah.
But then eventually you got to go like, why am I giving something other than myself more power over me?
Right.
That's dumb.
They may have, so you're saying there are people out there, organizations that have authority that can, take away opportunities or, give an opportunity to someone else, not you, even though you're
it's
deserving.
everywhere. But it's everywhere.
But it's everywhere. Exactly. It's in so many different forms, and sometimes it's very obvious and sometimes it's not very obvious. Regardless, you are refusing to give them your power. You're like, fine, well, I'm going to go a different direction then. And I'm going to, not let this stop me because, what good is that going to be?
Yeah. Think of this hypothetical. That's how I deal with it. Now imagine every company, every race has some sort of bias and all this stuff. But imagine everybody had my reaction. Would that still exist in 1 year? Hell no. They'd be like, what the fuck? Everybody is just like, no, we don't care. okay, bye. Or I'm going to go tell everyone that you're literally not giving people jobs because this person's black or brown, or
Mhm.
that person's Christian, or that lady's a woman and you only hire men. That's all silly. So can
Yeah.
we just admit it's silly and point our finger at you? And now I'm going to go to your competitor. If everyone has had a reaction and be like, you have no power over me. If everyone had that reaction rather than going like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened.
Mhm.
It's like, no, that happened because dumb shit happens all the time because people
Yeah.
are human and you come in with bias and stupidity, but you have to love yourself enough, believe in yourself enough to be like, I don't care who it is. No one's allowed to treat you a specific way.
Mhm.
No one's allowed to make you feel less than, regardless of their income or their stats in society, whatever race or
Right.
whatever. No, the moment you're born on earth, if you're a good human being, you deserve the best
Yeah.
and you will only accept the best. And all you're doing is not dealing with trash. If someone do like, all right, cool, I won't deal with the trash. Sometimes
Yeah.
the trash needs to be pointed the finger at if they're
Yeah.
really bad. And
Yeah.
that's why we have movements and stuff, which we're grateful
Mhm.
for. But it's just having that in you. It's like, not for a second. So when I guess I'm talking to young Indian men, when I hear that argument of, oh, I didn't get a job because of the racist, I go, shut up. You have
Mm.
energy. You're young. You have a voice. You are strong. What are you doing? Right? There's a
Yeah.
guy I interviewed called Harry Vidalcore, professor of finance in the interior Canada, immigrated from Canada, from India here, started life brand new, worked his way up using intellect. He has a great personality, but he is an Indian immigrant
Mhm.
in Canada where they don't get the whole lot of love nowadays, especially the whole student wave and all that stuff. They don't get the
Mm.
whole lot of love. You watch social media. This guy powered through, but he's vocal. He holds himself with respect.
Yeah.
And he's built a life for himself. He's a good example of, I don't see anything getting in that guy's way. He is a shit. Like that guy, he's like, I want to build a life. You could give him like the worst of the worst, and he'll be like, whoop, 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 and go right through it. I'm
Mhm.
like, that's the North Star. It's people like that for men,
Mhm.
women, everybody. And there's a lot of good examples.
Yeah.
And I feel like everyone should think of that when they think of people withholding their career, being like, no, I'm better than that person. I'm stronger
Mhm.
than that. And I don't deserve anything more. And that's sort of my argument for it, because my
Mhm.
pushback has always been, but hey, you gotta admit it exists, or it is hard. I'm like, of course it is. It exists. It's hard. It's horrible. It's shitty. All of it's bad. But
Mhm.
what are your options? Go
Yeah, what do you
poor
yeah, what's
me,
the alternative? To do
or
nothing? I'd
yeah,
say
or
the only
be
thing
be
I'd
a force.
add to this is because I think a big reason why, you're like, "Why aren't people speaking up or powering through? Why are they just kind of being like, 'Well, there's nothing I can do?'" It is important to talk about, like, well, yeah, why are people in that kind of frame of mind? And it could be because in order for you, for most people, I'd say, to feel comfortable to speak up, to advocate for themselves, or to point the figure of like, this person is doing these discriminatory practices. This isn't okay. We should all not, support them anymore. Um, you've got to have a level of security, whether that's support, family and friends, financial security. Because I think a lot of people, there's a lot of people I know, especially women too. Why would you stay this toxic work environment when there is a lot of discrimination? Because I need a job and I have responsibilities. I have a family. I need the money. So again, this is another reason why, if you need like, well, why should I build wealth, or why should I have this financial security? Why should I take my finances seriously? It gives you more power because it gives you
Yeah.
options to walk away or to speak up. And if you're forced to, hey, you've got to leave, we're firing you because of what you said, whatever. And you see this all the time in the news, you can afford to do that. But I think a lot of people may not have the support and the financial security to feel like they can have a voice.
I'll speak to that a little bit too now. So why don't you leave a toxic job? And it's just about being clever about how you do stuff. I've worked a horrible toxic job, and I was
Mhm.
my last place of appointment. I didn't like the owner of the company, just some of the stuff they said and did. And could I leave? No, I was financially tied to that company.
Mhm.
So it's just like, all right, cool. You do that, you do this. I'm strong. I don't like you. I'm just gonna get all my ducks in a row
Yeah,
so I can leave.
exactly.
I started putting together an exit strategy. That's what I
Mhm.
mean by empowering yourself. I didn't go,
Yeah.
oh, this is it. I'm stuck here. I went, all right, I'm gonna
What
start
can I
putting
do?
together an exit strategy and get the hell out. And then when I
Exactly.
got out, then I turned around and sort of give the middle fingers.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I did it smart. And all I'm saying that.
Yeah.
All I'm
Yeah.
saying is that. It's
So
just
it's
I'm
yeah,
saying
instead of being like, "Well, there's
grab
nothing I can do. I need this job." You're like,
there's
"Well,
always
what is option B?" The option B is
that's it.
make that exit strategy, that plan. And again, this is where like the financial part comes in. This is why it's so important to have your ducks in a row is so you have that freedom. And I think that's often people when they think of financial freedom, they probably think of like, I can retire early and take vacations. Like, no, it gives you the freedom to say, no, that's not okay. No, I'm not going to work
Yeah.
here anymore. No, I'm not going to work for you. I mean, I love not only being self employed, but also having the financial security that if a client, or a brand comes to me and they're like, "We want to work with you," I can take a look at like their values, and their what they're putting out there and be like, "Do I want to support them or not?" And it's great to be like, "No, I'm not working with them. I don't like them. I
Yeah.
don't support what they're doing.
Yeah.
Nope." And that's because I have my financial ducks in a row.
Yeah. I guess from mine, it was just I just want to make sure everyone just believes themselves is empowered.
Yeah,
My
yeah, yeah,
I just
absolutely.
and however you do it, because I think for it's hard to watch people who you've seen get beat down and then they
Yeah,
feel like they're powerless.
yeah.
And I just know from experience, man, people underestimate themselves a
They
lot.
do. You have if you don't feel like you're in that situation yet, that doesn't mean that you can't get there. But you do have
Yeah.
to like do that work and believe in yourself, build up your confidence, and find out, okay, how can I get out of this situation and into a better one? And believe me, you'll be able to find the information and finding, especially to people. And that's again why I think I've gotten so far is I followed people who are doing things that I want to do. And they're my motivation. You need to have like, yeah, your guiding light or something to motivate you that might be even, be bigger than yourself or beyond yourself to kind of get you out of there. Because money itself, like again, going back to my book, it's really not about money at all. It really is about how can we use money to feel fulfilled and get what we want out of life. What can we do there? Because money itself is not going to bring you happiness, but it can bring you choice. It can give you time. It can get you a lot of things, but money itself is worthless.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing I want to talk about, like when people are getting themselves out of they're in a crisis situation, they're severely in debt, they want to build wealth, they want to change careers. They're in that moment in their life where their back's
Mhm.
against the wall. They
Yeah.
gotta do something here. And we're talking a lot about emotional intelligence, how to understand your why. I've had this theory, and I've talked about it. People, it's nothing of a theory. It's just something I've done in the past. I don't do it now. I don't need to. But when my back's against the wall, I leverage emotions in the moment, and I'm cognizant of feeling it. So anger, I don't
Mhm.
like anger, but sometimes I think it's a useful tool. Of
Yeah.
I'm sick of this. I'm gonna change my life. And you
Mhm.
leverage anger for that small period of your life when you need it to do these leaps to we kind of alluded to before, get
Mhm.
out of your comfort zone, doing something you
Mhm.
don't normally do. The anger pushes you back, where you think back, being like, oh, I was out of your mind. Or when I told you before, I deluded myself into thinking I could do anything. Delusion. I leveraged it for
Mhm.
that period of my life to get a result. But while I was doing it, I knew I was leveraging those. Do
Mhm.
you ever speak about that or think about that of like, I'm going to leverage this overreaction right now temporarily because it only
Mhm.
has a use case right now.
Mhm.
It's bad to use it outside your life. Do you ever talk to people about that? Or have you ever done that in your life? Or you
I don't know
thinking
if I'd use
back?
the term leverage exactly, but what I'd more is if you're feeling certain feelings, especially strong emotions, listening to them. I don't think this made it into the book actually. No, I think it was when I was in the middle of still editing my book. But I sometimes get triggered with certain and I'm quick to anger when I feel like disrespected. If I get an email and I feel like they're wasting my time, I'm quick to like, how dare they? And I did a therapy session and it was when I was doing parts therapy, which I love. Internal family systems, it's such an amazing practice. If anyone wants to look into that, I talk about that in the book. But it's really getting to know all your different parts and there's why do we react in certain ways and get triggered and things like that. But anyways, we talked about, okay, why are you angry? Because I thought I was coming to therapy being like, I don't like being angry, I hate that emotion, how can I not be angry? They're like, well, actually it's important to acknowledge your anger and figure out, why am I angry? And really dive into, oh, maybe that anger is trying to tell me something and I'm not listening. And so for me, I think that anger at that moment was telling me, you don't feel heard. And I think you need to be a bit louder or more, effective in your communication so they can hear you. And I'm getting you angry, so you listen to me. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I'm all about feeling your feelings, but also stopping and thinking, why do I feel like that? Why am I sad? Why am I angry? Why am I anxious? Instead of just letting those, feelings rush and then you react and then you regret and then you're like, what happened? You really need to listen to what those emotions are trying to tell you. And it's probably something very simple like, hey, you're trying to do this and internally, you're not listening to me and they're not listening to you. So we need to do something about that. If that makes any sense. It doesn't sound
That
too
that
woo
No, 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 that's not too woo-woo. This is great.
woo.
Let's talk about therapy, the impact that's had on your life. I feel
Mm,
like that's where the big change happened for
yeah.
you. That's when. Um, I've so and a guy's perspective, every guy you'll talk to like, "Ugh, therapy, whatever," right? Like
But it
that's
it
what
is
it is.
amazing
Okay,
though. Like, but
but so
once
you
those
need
men
to
go to therapy, they're like, "Oh, it's actually pretty great."
yeah.
Right?
Well, I came out of just a really bad medical thing in my 20s.
Mhm.
I have a rare disease. It almost killed me. So I spent 5 years
Mm.
just doing treatments and stuff. And when I came, and they basically made me go sit down with a therapist, be like, "Hey, you went through something horrible.
Yeah.
Like you almost died. Like you had to write a will. Like talk about
Mm.
this." And they're like, and I was like, "Okay." I was pretty open. I just talk about everything. They're like, "Oh, that's great." And it was nice. It was for me. It was kind of like I only went to a couple sessions. They're like, "You're good," and they sent me home. They're like, "Yeah, yeah."
You're
They're
go
like, "You." Well, no, they're just like, "Oh yeah, you clearly have post traumatic stress. You'll have it
Yeah.
for a while, right? Because you'll clench up because you'll think it's going to come back." I was like, "Yeah, I
Yes.
know. It's crazy, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, okay. Well, you're aware. I'm aware." I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Anyway," so like you'll be fine. And then, but it was nice to kind of talk to someone, walk through, like walk through the why.
Mhm.
And for me, it helped when I was talking to them because like I used to get these visceral like. I used to like, tighten up. Like I'd relive like I'm gonna be hospitalized, my
Yeah.
organs shutting down. I'm like, I'd tighten up,
Yeah.
and I'm like, it would happen just randomly, like flashes, and it'd go away in a flash. And they'd be like,
Mhm.
"Oh yeah," and we just kind of talk through, and I talk through the emotion. But I noticed after I talked through the why and why that was happening, it kind of just like went away. And
Exactly.
maybe because I just like didn't try to bury it. I was like, "Oh no, I
Yeah.
went through something really fucked up.
Yeah.
I went through something that no one should go through. I didn't ask for it. It happened, but I came out of one piece. It's not going to happen again." It was kind of nice
Yeah.
to talk to someone else again. And I was talking to like a really good I don't know what I don't know what they're called, like psychologist, someone like a professional who's like, "All right, cool." I also had internal medical doctors, specialists who talked to me about it. A great team, but just talking about it, getting to the root cause of why I felt that way, it like dissipated from me.
Yeah.
This tension I felt, it was gone. I could just go live my life, and then I like was good. And I
Yeah.
haven't. It's just like I understand it now. I don't. It's hard to explain.
Yeah.
Did you have a similar feeling? Well, do you when you go to therapy? Did you have a similar type of those that feeling? I talk like tightening up. Certain things made you feel that way, and did talking about it help the same
Yeah,
way?
I mean, yeah. So in the book I talk about how my evolution of therapy. I've been in therapy I think I was doing it for a few years before the book. It was just regular kind of cognitive behavioral therapy, talk therapy. And that was really to help me. I did have some anxiety and some imposter syndrome. And I always thought my issues were just like more career issues and just, again, lack of confidence, but I had to be confident and all these kind of things. And that did help. But for me, what I realized while writing the book is like, oh, I actually have some deeper issues that I didn't realize, and actually the form of therapy I'm doing right now might not be what I need, and that's why there's lots of different forms of therapy for different people and different needs. And so I needed something that was more trauma specific, and I was very uncomfortable with that because I didn't think I had any trauma. Because when you think about trauma, you think of something horrific, like something that you went through, or you experience homelessness or an abusive childhood or whatever the case. You think of something huge, but trauma could be tiny, but have a huge impact. Because all trauma means is an unhealed wound. And until you heal it, it'll always be an open wound in your life, right? And so the way to heal it is by figuring out the right kind of form of therapy for you and working through it so you can let it go. And so it sounded like you were able to kind of unbury something, acknowledge it, understand it, and then it kind of just like, okay, I don't have that reaction anymore because I was able to heal it and work through it. Um for me, I realized I was bearing a lot of things from my past and my identity and how people treated me, and I just ignored it for a very long time and buried it. And it wasn't until I did a couple different forms of therapy. I did what is it called EMDR and IFS. And EMDR was really great. It's all about like reprocessing your trauma so you can move through it, and that was very very helpful. It's very effective. For me, the other one that really I got the biggest, I'd say, I guess, what's it called? Just breakthrough is when I did internal family systems. And I think just because of how my brain works, I'm very visual, and it is kind of it's all about like characters and working together, and it does sound very woo-woo when you first hear about it. But for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, this totally makes sense to me. And so we were able to really dive into, yeah, some of these unhealed, wounded parts inside me and really figure out who are they? Why do they react certain ways when there's certain triggers that are around in my environment? And then how can I let these things go and be like, you don't have to react like that anymore. We can move past this. And it changed my life. And it sounds like, kind of silly to say that, but it really did change my entire life because I realized I was holding on to this one thing and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was from 20 years ago or whatever. And I'm still holding on to that. I need to let that go because I don't, again, looking to my future, I don't want to be in my 50s or 40s and still reacting to these things from my past. I want to move on. And so, going back to your question about men in therapy, it's still, unfortunately, I think, a taboo. There's some stigma compared to, I'd say, women are a little bit more vocal. Like pretty much all my girlfriends are in therapy, and we talk about it like it's a great thing. It's like going to the dentist, going to the doctor. We should all be
Yeah.
going to the regularly because it is just like a tune up. For men, I think it will take a little bit more time for it to be kind of normalized, but honestly, a lot of the men in my life and, my husband included, they've embraced it and it's done a world of difference. Because again, you've got to think, don't I want to let this go? I'm not, there's
Yeah.
something inside me that is holding me back emotionally, or I don't like how I react in certain ways. And if I just keep on this path, nothing's going to change. So why not try something? And again,
Yeah.
it's completely private. No one needs to know that you're doing it. It's just for you. No one ever has
Yeah.
to know what you talk about in it. So why not give it a try? And it could be literally life changing. I have not met, honestly, I think most people are afraid that they'll waste money because it can be pricey, and they'll be like, "It didn't do anything." I'm like, "Well, okay, number 1, you have to go more than once sometimes. Like, you're not gonna get fixed in one session." But everyone I know that has really been vulnerable and opened themselves up to it and, gone, for a number of sessions, it's changed their lives. They're like, "Oh." But I think the hard part, and this is, again, also going back to the being a man, is vulnerability is very tricky, because again, just I'm a woman, but from what I understand from men is you're raised in a way where you're told you aren't allowed to be vulnerable because you have to be strong all the time.
Yeah.
But vulnerability is being strong. It is being strong
Yeah.
because it is the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, I think there's a balance there because obviously
Yeah.
I'm married, so my wife is always like being more vulnerable. I'm like, what do you want me to like cry all day? Like that's
No,
crazy
that's not what
talk.
it
But
means.
but
No,
but
it
but
just means,
yeah,
like, being honest with yourself and just,
yes,
like, saying I tell this to my husband too, because again, he's a man, he has trouble sometimes, saying how he feels, and I'm just
yeah.
like, "Just tell me. It's not gonna ruin anything. It's hard to try to guess what you're feeling. Just tell me." And
Well,
then it's just
y-
like it's a relief.
I think one thing I've noticed for like big men and women difference, at least for me, is there's not a whole lot of guessing what we feel. It's like, how do you feel today? I'm like, oh, I feel shitty. Why? I didn't get enough sleep. I didn't get enough sleep. That's it. It's not because I have a problem with you. It's not because
Yeah.
something crazy is happening. It's like, oh, I didn't get enough sleep, so I feel shitty. So I'm more lackluster. I'm less responsive. It's like that's all it is. Sometimes it's just
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, sometimes
It's
it's
like
that, and
click,
women
click,
do that too.
click,
Sometimes they're like, "Oh,
click.
I'm hungry, I'm tired,"
Yeah,
whatever the case. But sometimes it is like, "Is it just that?" You're like, "Well, there's also this thing I'm really nervous about that's like I have a meeting and I'm really anxious about." There could be something else, or there's like,
it's a.
"Oh, I ran into my ex," or something like that. There's something you're like, "Oh, maybe there's something else
You
part of
should
that
feel
too."
more like yeah, like I'll easily say that to my wife too. Like I don't really care. You should feel comfortable enough in a relationship where you can say this stuff like that. Like oh,
Yeah.
like I'll constantly tell her like oh man, I'm feeling burnt out or I'm a little bit nervous about this. That's a
Mhm.
little weird and stuff like I'll just say stuff like that. But that's really like I don't have internally more to expound upon it.
Mhm.
It's just like that's all I have. It's just like I
Yeah.
just feel that way. But then
Yeah.
my brain's already processing how to deal with it because I have those built-in mechanisms. Of like all right,
Mm.
cool. I think making therapy more palatable for men is adding framing it as a practical utility
Yeah.
of okay, you said like no one can know. You can go, okay, that's cool. Like someone told me that, but yeah, you can just go, nobody will know. I'm like, okay, that's cool. So great, there's anonymity there. That's nice,
Mhm.
right? Because I don't want to go off and tell all my guy friends like, hey, what did you do with therapy? No one's
Yeah.
gonna talk like that. That's not gonna happen. And then secondly, it's we like to act. I think a lot of guys naturally like to problem solve and analyze. They
Yeah.
think there first. It's the analytical first and emotional second.
Yeah.
So I would be looking at it as, you know, are my relationships always suffering? Is there always
Mm.
tension in my relationships? Am I always in and out of relationships? And I've been like, it's a recurring theme. Is
Yeah.
my workplace environment always a certain way? Is my
Mm.
income always a certain way?
Mhm.
Okay, something's going on here. I can't point my
Mhm.
finger. I need another lens to look at it because
Yeah.
there's something I'm doing that because I'm me, I'm not conscious of that I need to get to the bottom of and
Yeah.
figure out. All right, cool. Therapist, you're now my business partner. We're going to figure out and fix the Gary product and figure out that's happening so I can then correct and excel in those other areas of my life.
Mhm.
When I think of it like that, and you take it out and I go, oh, great. I have Julie, the therapist, who's my business partner, and we work on optimizing the Gary Gill product and figuring out, how then it suddenly sounds,
Whatever makes sense in your brain, sure,
but
give it that
it
label. I
worked.
love where you're going with this.
But because like any guys, they can be like, oh, I get it now. I mean, that's all
Yeah.
you're doing. You're just tuning up the machine. You're just
It's
making sure we run
exactly.
off the.
If that makes more sense, and I tell people too, it's like tuning up your car, or it's like it's as you should go as if it's as regular as going to the dentist and making sure you don't have all this plaque on there that's building up, right? And again, when you go to therapy, I think also too, people are annoyed when they go to therapy and they're like, I was hoping that they were going to give me some answers. They were going to give me advice. I'm like, well, they're not advisors. They are
Yeah.
basically mediators or guides to help you like actually process your emotions and listen to yourself and like figure out those answers for yourself.
That's important. So guides versus giving you answers. I think giving answers is dangerous. I think that's when you get
Because
bad examples of
you're the
how
one who
therapy went
knows you
wrone.
best if you think about it. You're the one who knows
It's
you best. But
someone
they
also
can ask you
plant
questions that you've never maybe thought about. You're like, oh,
lead you.
interesting. And will again maybe help you view things through a different lens. And that might be like the thing. They're like, oh, light bulb moment. Yeah, that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. I just didn't see it like that.
I remember when I was talking like after I'd got better from the sickness, they'd ask me questions like, okay, what happened just before you tightened up? And I go like, I'd have to
Yeah.
think back. And like them asking a sequence questions got me to dissect what was happening.
Yeah.
It was so useful. I think, but they never once planted a thing of like, oh, you're this now, you're this, or they never once said that. They were saying like, okay, so what happened before that? What happened? Okay, then exactly what did
Yeah.
you feel? It was like great. And we could just
Hmm.
deconstruct it all and get to the answers.
Yeah.
And another thing, just for guys, I'm trying to convince guys who need it to
Oh, I think everyone
try
should go to
therapy.
therapy.
All right,
Every gender
but
should go to therapy.
uh,
It's amazing.
but because and then another thing is there's I'm a mixed martial arts fighter. He's Canadian. His name is George St. Pierre. Right,
Hmm.
he is known as he beat out Sidney Crosby for Canadian of the Year year.
Oh, wow.
Sidney Crosby won gold in the Olympics. George St. Pierre still got a rank over him for the whatever top Canadian. So he for in his career started losing fights. He got knocked out. He was scared to get back in the octagon.
Yeah.
He openly admitted, I'm seeing a sports psychologist to
Hmm.
figure out what's going on here. And then he openly admitted, he's like, every time before I get into a fight, I'm scared. I'm
Mm,
petrified. I don't want to be there. I'm about to fight. Like, it's like
yeah.
he did the opposite of what you're supposed to do as a cage fighter, as a guy who
Yeah.
gets in an octagon. And it's just like, that then became
You're like,
this
oh, maybe
thing
it's okay that we can acknowledge that I'm afraid sometimes, but it's fine. And you know
everything.
what's interesting? I love a good
Yeah.
sports documentary. They're
Yeah.
talking a lot more about mental health and like I was watching like, Full Swing and like Break Point about tennis. All these really top tier sports athletes see sports psychologists because
Yeah.
they're like, why is my game going down? And I'm like at the top and then I'm going down. They go see a sports psychologist to find out what has changed. And it's, yeah. So I actually personally love that all these different industries and type of people, especially people that have like big audiences and that are famous, are talking about mental health because, yeah, no, it's again, you can have all the fame and money in the world doesn't mean that you don't have any mental health issues that you have to figure out. We're all human. We have health issues. We have mental health issues, of course.
You get your mind right, you're basically can do whatever you want in life.
Yeah.
And like how many people do you know that have all the money and then they're miserable as shit? And because
Right.
they never focus on, they're just chasing the dollar their entire life. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I got for that. That was my mental health
Yeah.
thing. What else? So for the podcast today, we went through how people can get their financial life in order. It's pretty straightforward. It's all you can basically one YouTube video worth of stuff.
I know.
Um, also,
But
people
it's
can.
like it's easy to understand the process, but what do we say? Like debt, save, invest, earn. But it's kind of what we branched off into is like, why is it so hard for most people to do those things? Because they're so simple. It is the internal stuff, the mental stuff, those blocks that we need to, and the belief in ourselves and empowerment and things like that. That is what's holding so many people back because they just don't think it's what's possible or, they don't know what's mentally holding them back.
And I think a key first step, and I think this will help a lot, is everyone actually reading the book, Everything But Money. You can check it out. It'll be in the link in the description in the first pinned comment to start you on that. Like I said, we emphasize a lot on mental health today because that is the differentiator between you living the life you want, not
Yeah.
just financially, the actual life you want. Check out the book, read that. You got YouTube, check that out. You'll see all the links in the description and stuff,
Mhm.
everything. I had a great time speaking with you today. I really appreciate it, Jessica. We'll talk
Thank
soon.
you. Yeah, no, it was a pleasure to be on here. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye.